The following is a presentation of New Worker Radio. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily represent those of WZML, its staff, or management.
Hello, and welcome to New Worker News on WZML 92.9. My name is Manolis, bringing you national and international updates from a worker's perspective.
The United States and its murderous partner, Israel, are escalating their bloodthirsty interests in the Middle East by intensifying their attacks and threats in several countries. This comes at a time when Israel has announced that it is preparing new atrocities against the Palestinian people and has officially declared that it hopes to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. It was recently revealed that the US and Israel are conducting coordinated attacks in Yemen. Media reported that the targets were the capital, Sana'a, and Hodeidah. Port facilities are located in both targeted cities. 50 bombs were fired by Israel in one attack on Yemen. Yemen has been the target of imperialist interventions for over 10 years. And in the past 40 days, the US has carried out over 1,000 strikes, killing dozens of people. They have repeatedly emphasized that they wanted to send a message to Iran. Israel also carries out similarly severe attacks. Against the backdrop of the expansion of Israel's genocidal operations in the Gaza Strip and the escalation of imperialist rivalries in the region, the Houthis in Yemen launched an attack on Israel's Ben Gurion airport on Saturday, May 4th. Netanyahu, commenting on Israel's corresponding decisions to intensify the atrocities against the Palestinian people and to fully occupy the Gaza Strip, said, quote, "The population of Gaza will leave for their own protection." On this issue, the spokesman for the Israeli occupation forces, Efi Defrin, also stated, quote, "The operation involves a large-scale attack and the expulsion of a large part of the population of the Gaza Strip." The US government is also one of the main culprits for the genocide in Palestine, as its continued support, financial, political, and military, for the barbarous, expansionist aims of Israel, its crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests to silence any opposition to the intense pressure to stop all support for Israel, and its vote against the ceasefire in the UN make it an accomplice. The new Trump government, the supposed peacemaker, is not changing this course. The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is catastrophic. It is worsening, and the world is watching. The race for artificial intelligence is heating up as the number and quality of high-performance Chinese AI models threaten the United States, leading the industry, while the gap between the performances of the leading models is narrowing. This is according to the annual report on the state of AI worldwide compiled by the Stanford University in California. In a comparative table for conversational large language models known as LLMs, or colloquially known as chatbots, it appears that at the beginning of 2024, users ranked the top one just 12% higher than the 10th one. But by the beginning of 2025, the difference between the two had narrowed to only 5%. The front is becoming extremely competitive and dense. Productive AI models are getting bigger on average, using more variables, more computing power, and more training data. However, it turns out that smaller models can achieve excellent performance. Thanks to better algorithms, a newer model can reach the performance of a model 100 times larger 2 years ago. That's why the Stanford report calls 2024 the year of smaller AI models. The report also highlights another change. The vast majority of the most important AI models are now being developed by industry and not by academia, a situation that is the opposite of the early years of the new millennium, when productive AI and neural networks had not yet taken off. Monopolies exploit the intellectual product produced in universities, that is, with state public funding, improve it and sell it for gold. Before 2006, only 20% of important AI models were built by companies, a percentage that reached 60% in 2023 and 90% in 2024. The US remains the leading producer of notable models, building 40 in 2024 compared to China's 15, including its famous one, the cheap and fast DeepSeek, and EU's 3. But now other regions of the world are also entering the race, such as the Middle East, South America, and Southeast Asia. According to the Stanford report, the US leads in model quality have disappeared. China, which produces the most scientific publications and patents in the field, is developing models on par with the United States. In 2023, the United States was 20% ahead on the MMLU language comprehension test, but by the end of 2024, it was only 0.3% ahead. Open AI models like China's DeepSeek and Meta's Llama have made big strides recently. These models let researchers see and tweak their inner workings, though not the data they were trained on. By early 2025, they were only about 1.7% behind the best closed models in performance. This progress is putting pressure on companies like OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, to release more open versions of their models as well. Meanwhile, smaller models are gaining popularity because they're quicker to train, respond faster, and use less energy. Still, many of the most advanced models are getting larger and more demanding. Each year, training them takes twice as much electricity, and the computing power needed doubles every 5 months. The amount of data used also doubles every 8 months. This is happening even though hardware is getting 40% more energy efficient each year. Due to better algorithms and technology, however, the cost to train these models has dropped a lot, from $20 per million words in 2022 to just 70 cents in late 2024. Cutting down AI's energy use is a growing concern. Every time a large language model is upgraded, it uses as much electricity as 120 United States homes do in a year. Even using these models burns a lot of energy. Answering a question with AI can use 10 times more power than a regular web search. Generating an image with AI takes about half the energy stored in a smartphone battery. Some say these high energy costs are a burden on the monopolies running AI. One estimate says that if Google used AI to write short answers for just half of its search queries, it could cost up to $6 billion a year in electricity alone. In reality, of course, the cost will be passed on to consumers through an increase in the price of a kilowatt per hour, whether they use a monopoly's AI services or not. The increase is already visible in areas of the US where electricity generation or its distribution network is barely adequate, with AI data centers abruptly adding a major new burden. IT monopolies in the US are already pushing for increased nuclear power generation, with Microsoft having already secured the reopening of the 3 Mile Island plant, where the worst nuclear accident in the US occurred. Even with all the progress, AI still struggles with big issues like making things up, misrepresenting information, and showing bias against certain social groups. A recent Stanford report highlights how serious these problems are. For example, researchers from 4 universities tested OpenAI's Whisper, which turns speech into text. They found it sometimes invented entire sentences, falsely described people's race, or even claimed someone in the audio had committed murder. In one bizarre case, a simple sentence about taking an umbrella was turned into a violent and completely false story about killing people. In another, a mention of 2 other girls and a lady was wrongly transcribed as including their race. ChatGPT has also had its issues. A recent update had to be pulled just days after launch because users complained it was overly agreeable and eager to please, even when asked ridiculous things, leading people to joke that it acted like a suck-up, saying yes to almost everything. The human brain creates amazing achievements of human knowledge, consuming only a few watts of power, in stark contrast to even the most modern computers, which, by comparison, resemble multi-kilowatt stoves. The monopoly, Intel, presented a few days ago as a research prototype the world's largest neuromorphic system, to which it gave the codename HoloPoint. This system was originally developed at the state Sandia National Laboratories in the USA and uses the neuromorphic processor Low-Hi 2 of Intel. The aim is to support research at Sandia Laboratories for a future new type of AI inspired by the human brain. Intel's new AI system, called for Holopoint, can handle 20 quadrillion operations per second, while using far less energy than traditional computer systems that rely on GPUs and CPUs. Intel says this makes it ideal for constantly training different types of AI, from language models to tools for solving scientific problems. Holopoint uses a new kind of chip called a neuromorphic processor, which is designed to work more like a human brain. These chips use special networks where artificial neurons send signals directly to each other instead of constantly going through memory. This setup makes them much faster and way more energy efficient. Inside Holopoint are over 1,000 of these brain-inspired chips called Lohi 2, along with standard CPUs for support. Altogether, they stimulate 1.15 billion neurons and 120 billion connections, but the whole system only uses about as much power as a few home appliances, that is, just 2.6 kilowatts. In other news, Mother's Day just passed this past Sunday. It is a time for giving gifts, giving thanks, and glorifying. But behind the bouquets and advertising slogans lies a bitter reality. In capitalism, motherhood is idealized, but simultaneously burdened with irresolvable contradictions. Mothers are expected to love selflessly, provide emotionally, and patiently parent their children, while simultaneously remaining economically stable. This dual expectation is not an individual problem, but rather an expression of the structural incompatibility of family and wage labor in capitalism, in which reproductive labor is individualized and assigned to women. What constitutes so-called good motherhood is clearly defined in U.S. society based on bourgeois conservative ideals. These ideals include that the mother is responsible for the emotional well-being of her children, that she must sacrifice herself, she must put her own needs aside, that she is always available, and that she loves with a smile. This ideal is omnipresent. Studies show that even working mothers try to conform to this ideal and are forced into a constant emotional labor. They are expected not only to provide care, but also to appear happy. The so-called happy mother is becoming the beacon of liberal values, and our feelings of guilt are becoming a psychological side effect. The truth is, mothers are under pressure, economically, socially, and psychologically. The balancing act between paid work and care work is almost impossible to manage. Part-time jobs, precarious employment, and dependence on their partner's income are part of everyday life for many working women. The reality remains the same, that it is primarily working women who retreat into part-time work, who do the unpaid work that keeps our society running without any recognition, without fair distribution, and without social security or guaranteed maternity care. Under capitalist conditions, reconciliation is simply an illusion, leading mothers to experience contradictions that are often experienced as individuals and thus must be processed alone. This leads mothers' well-being increasingly limited, and phenomena such as parental burnout occurring. The capitalist system needs motherhood, but only on its own terms. Women are supposed to have children and raise them as efficiently as possible to become capable workers. But in doing so, they are supposed to avoid making any social demands on time, on resources, on equal distribution. Instead, responsibility is individualized. Failure is personalized, not politicized. Those who don't make it are labeled as incompetent mothers, not as victims of structural exploitation. Capitalist logic turns motherhood into a trap. It is morally exalted and materially devalued. As long as reproductive and thus care work is not organized collectively, but solved privately, women continue to suffer. Equality is an illusion under these conditions. It is not Mother's Day, but the remaining 364 days of the year that demonstrate how seriously a society truly takes the value of our working mothers. In other national news, student loans are consistently at the back of many people's minds. The stress leading up to making that payment for the month, or the overwhelming feeling of being completely unable to begin payments. The short-lived relief only comes with temporary fixes, which only kick the can down the road. Governments come and go, the carrot of forbearance or forgiveness waved in front of our faces, with one government, and then another enters office that brings out the stick, and our payments must resume with higher costs. In late April, the Trump administration announced that its Office of Federal Student Aid, FSA, will resume collections of its defaulted federal student loan portfolio on Monday, May 5th. Collections will take place alongside wage garnishments of those behind on student loans. Garnishments can be as high as 15%. Historically, the major companies in the student loan industry have favored Republicans, demonstrating how they plan to benefit under a Trump presidency. One of the most prominent ones, Navient, has been known for years, since 2017 and even as far back as 2014, to engage in illegal, exploitative, and predatory practices, which have led to handsome profits. For example, in 2014, the company, Navient, along with Sallie Mae, another major student loan provider of the time, were ordered to pay back over $100 million of nearly 78,000 overcharged people. In 2022, another $22 million was returned to those overcharged. Another predatory practice by both companies is what is known as forbearance steering. This is where borrowers are persuaded in tough financial situations to stop payments, but accrue interest and capitalized payments. Many suffered the crushing blow to their wages from this practice. Of course, these actions disproportionately affect workers, especially black workers and other minority groups. Now, during the time of a looming war and impending crises, the Trump administration comes, as all capitalist governments of the past, to conduct an attack against the standard of living of the working class. The bourgeoisie makes use of crisis conditions for an organized attack on the wages of the workers, and, as the collective capitalist, the state, must ensure that the needs of the monopolies in this context are met.
You've been listening to New Worker News on 92.9 FM WZML, your home for local, national, and international news, all from a working class perspective. New Worker News is the official organ of the Communist Workers Platform. If you're a worker, we would like to hear from you. You can reach us at cwpusa@protonmail.com. Again, that's cwpusa@protonmail.com. If you would like more news from a worker's point of view, visit us at newworker.us. You can find weekly articles on events happening all over the country and internationally. If you've enjoyed the program and wish to see more working class reporting, consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/newworker. And thank you for listening to New Worker News on 92.9 FM WZML.